Admiral Park Dae-ho stood at the observation deck of Luna Station, watching the stars. For 40 years, he had looked at the same view every morning. Today was different. Today, the stars were moving. The first ship appeared like a shadow against the void. Then another. Then dozens more. They were massive, each one bigger than Earth's largest city. Their hulls gleamed with strange blue light that hurt to look at directly. Park had never seen anything like them, but he knew what they were. Alien ships. The moment humanity had feared and prepared for had finally arrived. "Sir, we're getting signals from Earth Command," said Lieutenant Kim So-young, her voice shaking. "All defense stations are to go to maximum alert." Park nodded but didn't move from the window. The alien fleet was arranging itself in a perfect formation above Earth. There had to be at least 50 ships, maybe more. Each one looked like it could destroy a planet by itself. On Earth, Captain Lee So-min was running through the corridors of Defense Command. Alarms were blaring everywhere. Soldiers and officers rushed past her, their faces pale with fear. She burst into the main command center where dozens of people were staring at screens showing the alien fleet. "Report," she ordered. 53. "Ships, Captain," said Commander Choi Min-ho. "They appeared 15 minutes ago. No warning, no previous contact. They're just sitting there, waiting." Waiting for what? Her answer came immediately. Every screen in the room flickered and went black. Then a new image appeared. It was a creature unlike anything humans had ever seen. It had 4 arms, skin like metal, and eyes that glowed with the same blue light as the ships. "People of Earth," the creature said in perfect English, "I am High Commander of the Galactic Hegemony. You will listen carefully, because I will only say this once." The room was completely silent. Everyone stared at the screen, afraid to even breathe. "Your species has violated galactic law by developing technology without permission. You have built weapons without approval. You have explored space without authorization. These are serious crimes against the established order of the galaxy." Captain Lee felt her hands clench into fists. No one had told humanity there were laws to follow. No one had asked for their permission to exist. "However," the alien continued, "the hegemony is merciful. We offer you one chance to avoid total destruction. You will surrender all weapons. You will accept our rule. You will pay tribute to the hegemony for the rest of your existence. You have 72 hours to comply." The screen flickered again, showing images of other planets. Beautiful worlds full of life and cities. Then the same worlds after the hegemony had finished with them. Burned, empty, dead. "This is what happens to species that refuse our generous offer," the High Commander said. "Choose wisely." The transmission ended. The command center was quiet for a long moment. Then everyone started, talking at once. Officers shouted orders, technicians worked frantically at their computers, and communication devices buzzed with calls from around the world. "Quiet!" Captain Lee shouted. "Everyone quiet!" The room fell silent again. "Get me the president, the prime ministers, and every world leader on secure channels. Get me Admiral Park on Luna Station. Get me everyone." While the communications were being set up, Dr. Kim Tae-young was in his laboratory, studying the alien transmission. He had recorded every second of it and was analyzing the data. What he found made his blood run cold. The transmission contained hidden information, technical specifications of the alien ships, records of their previous conquests, and a list. A very long list. "Captain Lee," he said over the communication system, "you need to see this immediately." Minutes later, Captain Lee was in the laboratory staring at Dr. Kim's findings. They've done this before, Dr. Kim said. 847 times. Every species they've encountered has received the same ultimatum, and every single one has surrendered. Everyone? All of them. Some tried to negotiate. Some begged for mercy. Some offered to serve the hegemony willingly. But none of them fought back. None of them even tried to resist. Captain Lee stared at the data. 847 species, all conquered without a real fight. The hegemony had become so confident that they didn't even bother with surprise attacks anymore. They just showed up and demanded surrender. There's something else, Dr. Kim said. Their ships are powerful, but they're designed for intimidation, not combat. They've never had to fight a real war. They don't know how. Back on Luna Station, Admiral Park was having a very different conversation. He was talking to Commander Choi Min-ho on a private, encrypted channel that didn't go through normal military communications. "Is it time?" Commander Choi asked. Admiral Park looked out at the alien fleet one more time. Then he turned away from the window and walked to a secure terminal hidden behind a false wall. He placed his hand on a scanner and spoke a code phrase he had memorized 50 years ago but never thought he would use. "Project Dark Harbor is authorized," he said. Across the solar system, hidden bases that had been dormant for decades suddenly came to life. On the far side of the moon, massive doors opened in what looked like empty craters. In the asteroid belt, rocks that weren't really rocks began moving toward Earth. Beyond Neptune, in the cold darkness of the outer system, something enormous began to wake up. Captain Lee was still meeting with world leaders when her communication device buzzed with an urgent message from Admiral Park. The message was only 3 words: Dark Harbor active. She ended her calls immediately and rushed to a different part of the command center. This area was restricted, accessible only to the highest-ranking officers. She entered another code and spoke to a hidden microphone. "This is Captain Lee So-min. Authorization Alpha 779. Requesting immediate conference with Dark Fleet Command." The response came immediately. "Confirmed, Captain. Admiral Kang Min-soo is standing by." A new screen activated showing a man in a uniform she had never seen before. Behind him was what looked like the bridge of a warship, but the technology was far more advanced than anything in Earth's public fleet. "Captain Lee," Admiral Kang said, "we've been waiting for this day for 50 years. The Dark Armada is ready." "How? Many ships?" 3,247 combat vessels, full crews, fully armed, all positioned and ready for immediate deployment. Captain Lee felt her heart race. 3,000 ships? How was that possible? How had they built and hidden such a massive fleet? "The hegemony thinks they're dealing with a primitive planet," Admiral Kang continued. "They have no idea what we really are. They're about to learn that humanity doesn't kneel to anyone." As the 72-hour countdown began, the aliens waited confidently for Earth's surrender. They had done this so many times before. It was always the same: fear, panic, desperate attempts to negotiate, and finally, inevitable submission. But they had never encountered a species like humanity. A species that had been preparing for this moment since the day they first looked at the stars and wondered if they were alone. A species that had learned the most important lesson in the universe. If you want peace, prepare for war. The countdown continued, but Earth was not preparing to surrender. Earth was preparing to fight. 50 years ago, Director Yoon Hae-jin had been a young scientist working on humanity's first deep space telescope project. She was 25 years old when the telescope detected something that changed everything. It wasn't stars or planets or empty space. It was a signal a message from somewhere far away in the galaxy. The message was simple: submit or die. It wasn't meant for Earth. It was meant for another species, somewhere in a distant star system. But Earth's telescope had picked it up by accident. Director Yoon and her team listened in horror as they decoded more messages. Demands for surrender, threats of destruction, and then silence from the targeted world. "We're not alone," Director Yoon had told the Emergency Council that night. "And we're not safe." That was the day Project Dark Harbor began. Now, 50 years later, engineer Jang So-young stood in a facility that officially didn't exist. It was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid floating in the darkness between Mars and Jupiter. Around her, thousands of workers were preparing ships that the rest of humanity had never seen. These weren't exploration vessels. They weren't designed for scientific research or peaceful contact with aliens. Every line of their hulls, every weapon system, every piece of technology had been designed for one purpose: to kill things that wanted to kill humanity. "Status report," she said to her team leaders. "All primary systems are online," said Chief Engineer Park Min-joon. "Dark matter. Engines are running at full power. Weapons are charged and ready. Hull armor is holding steady." Jang nodded and looked out at the ship taking shape in front of her. It was beautiful in a deadly way. Sleek and black, covered in sensor arrays and weapon ports. It looked like a predator from the deepest parts of the ocean, built for hunting, in the void between stars. How many more? This is the last one. Ship number 3247. The Dark Armada is complete. 3,000 ships. Built in secret over 5 decades. Powered by technologies that Earth's public scientists didn't even know existed. Crewed by people who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. But the war had come. Lieutenant Colonel Shin Dong-wook was in another hidden facility, this one buried deep under the ice of Antarctica. Around him, hundreds of officers were coordinating the most complex military operation in human history. They were moving entire fleets across the solar system without anyone noticing. "Report from Titan Base," said Major Lee Hae-jin. "All stealth. Frigates are in position. The hegemony fleet hasn't detected them." "Report from Ceres Station," said Captain Nam Yu-jin. "Heavy cruisers are ready to move on your command." "Report from Neptune Shipyard," said Commander Park So-ra. "The dreadnoughts are powering up their main engines." Lieutenant Colonel Shin looked at the tactical display showing the positions of every Dark Fleet ship. They were everywhere. Hidden, in asteroid fields, camouflaged against the dark side of moons, waiting in the cold emptiness beyond Pluto. The hegemony had no idea they were surrounded. "What about Earth's public fleet?" he asked. "All regular military ships have been ordered." "To maintain normal positions," Major Lee replied. "The hegemony is watching them, but they're only seeing what we want them to see." That was the beautiful part of the plan. Earth's public space program had always been a decoy. The ships that everyone knew about, the space stations that appeared on the news, the Mars colonies that tourists visited. All of it was real, but it wasn't the whole truth. The real human civilization had been built in secret. While the public watched rocket launches and celebrated moon landings, the Dark Harbor Project had been building a military force that could fight a galactic empire. Dr. Park Ji-won was in her laboratory on Luna Station, working on the most important part of the entire operation: communication. The Dark Fleet was spread across the entire solar system, but every ship needed to coordinate perfectly when the time came to fight. She had solved the problem by studying something the aliens thought was impossible: faster-than-light communication, using quantum entanglement. Every Dark Fleet ship had a quantum communicator that could send and receive messages instantly, no matter how far apart they were. "Test signal to Neptune Command," she said to her assistant. "Signal sent," he replied. Seconds later, a response came back from Admiral Baek-Ju-won, commanding the Outer System Defense Fleet. "Received clearly. All ships report ready." Dr. Park smiled. The aliens could intercept normal radio signals, but they couldn't even detect quantum entanglement communication. They had no idea how well coordinated the human forces really were. Commander Kim Tae-ho was on board the flagship of Battle Group 7, hidden in the shadow of Europa. His ships were disguised to look like ice chunks floating around Jupiter. The hegemony's sensors couldn't tell the difference between frozen water and advanced stealth armor. "Sir, we're receiving movement orders from Dark Fleet Command," said his communications officer. "Show me." The orders appeared on his screen. In 6 hours, when Earth's 72-hour deadline expired, every Dark Fleet ship would decloak simultaneously. The hegemony would go from thinking they faced a helpless planet to finding themselves surrounded by the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. "Pass the word to all ships," Commander Kim said. "This is it. This is what we've trained for our entire lives." His crew began preparing for battle. These weren't scared civilians or untrained volunteers. Every person on every Dark Fleet ship had been born into the project. They had grown up knowing that someday they might have to fight for humanity's freedom. They had trained in secret facilities, studied alien technology, and prepared for a war that most of the galaxy didn't believe was possible. Admiral Kang Min-soo, overall commander of the Dark Armada, was on board the flagship Hidden Dragon. It was the largest warship humanity had ever built, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. But he wasn't thinking about firepower. He was thinking about something more important: the message they were about to send. Status of all battle. "Groups?" he asked. "All groups report ready, sir," said Captain Yu Hye-jin, his second in command. "Stealth systems are holding. The enemy hasn't detected any of our ships." "Good. What about our intelligence on their fleet?" "Complete tactical analysis is finished," said Commander Oh Jin-ae, the fleet's intelligence officer. "We've identified their command ship, their weapon systems, and their weak points. They're powerful, but they're designed for intimidation, not real combat." Admiral Kang nodded. That made sense. When you've conquered 847 species without a real fight, you don't need to build ships for actual war. You just need to build ships that look scary. "Sir," Captain, Yu said quietly, "are we really going to do this? Are we really going to fight the entire galactic hegemony?" Admiral Kang looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were thousands of species that had surrendered without a fight. Billions of intelligent beings living under the rule of conquerors, who demanded submission simply because they were strong. "Captain," he said, 50 years ago we learned that there were empires in space that believed might makes right. We learned that they think fear is more important than freedom. We could have hidden. We could have hoped they would never find us. Instead, we decided to build something that could fight back." He turned to face his officers. "We're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every species that was too afraid to resist. We're fighting for the idea that no one has the right to demand another person's surrender, no matter how powerful they think they are." The countdown continued. 66 hours remaining until the hegemony's deadline. But they weren't counting down to Earth's surrender. They were counting down to the moment when the galaxy would learn that humanity doesn't kneel to anyone. In hidden bases across the solar system, 3,000 ships and their crews made final preparations for the largest space battle in galactic history. The hegemony thought they were about to receive another easy surrender. Instead, they were about to discover that they had made the biggest mistake in their empire's history. They had threatened the wrong species. Ambassador Han Yu-jin adjusted his tie and took a deep breath. In 5 minutes, he would give the most important performance of his life. The entire future of humanity depended on how well he could lie to the most powerful empire in the galaxy. He was standing in the main communication center of the United Nations building in New York. Around him, cameras and transmission equipment were being prepared for a galaxy-wide broadcast. The hegemony wanted to hear Earth's response to their ultimatum, and Han was going to give them exactly what they expected to hear. "Ambassador," said his aide, "the transmission link is ready. The hegemony fleet is waiting for your response." Han nodded and walked to the podium. Behind him, Earth's leaders sat in carefully arranged chairs, all looking appropriately concerned and frightened. They had rehearsed this scene many times over the past 24 hours. "Begin transmission," Han said. The cameras activated, and his image was broadcast to the hegemony fleet above Earth and to monitoring stations across the galaxy. Han had studied hundreds of hours of footage from other species' surrender broadcasts. He knew exactly how to look defeated and desperate. "High Commander of the Galactic Hegemony," he began, his voice shaking just the right amount. "The people of Earth have received your ultimatum. We are overwhelmed by the power of your fleet. We understand that resistance would be futile." Above Earth's orbit, the High Commander watched the transmission with satisfaction. This was always how it went. The primitive species would beg for more time, promise to consider surrender, and then eventually give up completely. It was boring, really. "However," Han continued, "we humbly request additional time to prepare for the transition. Our world has many governments, many different groups of people. We need time to convince them all to accept your generous offer of mercy." The High Commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "How much time do you require, little human?" Perhaps an additional 48 hours. "We promise we are not trying to resist. We simply need time to organize the surrender properly." On the bridge of the Hegemony flagship, the other alien officers were already discussing how to divide up Earth's resources. They had done this so many times that they could predict exactly how long each phase would take. "Very well," the High Commander said. "You have 48 additional hours. Do not test our patience further." The transmission ended, and Han immediately slumped in his chair. The performance had been exhausting, but it had worked. The hegemony believed that Earth was just another frightened planet preparing to surrender. What they didn't know was that every hour of delay was allowing more Dark Fleet elements to move into position. Captain Nam Sung-ho commanded Battle Group 12, which was currently disguised as a small asteroid field near Saturn. His ships looked like rocks from the outside, but inside they were state-of-the-art warships ready for combat. "Sir, we're receiving new movement orders," said his navigation officer. "Show me." The orders were simple: move closer to Earth, but stay hidden. When the time came to reveal the Dark Armada, every ship needed to be in perfect position. "Helm, take us in slowly. Make it look like natural drift. Communications, maintain radio silence except for quantum channels." His ships began moving toward the inner system, their engines running at minimum power to avoid detection. To any watching sensors, they just looked like asteroids slowly moving through space. Meanwhile, Commander Lim Da-un was coordinating one, of the most complex stealth operations in military history. From her command center on Ceres, she was tracking the movement of over 3,000 ships while making sure none of them were detected by hegemony sensors. Status report on all battle. Groups, she ordered. Groups 1 through 5 are in position around Earth, reported Lieutenant Park Min-young. Groups 6 through 10 are moving in from the outer system. Groups 11 through 15 are maintaining perimeter watch. What about the special units? All stealth frigates are in close-range reconnaissance positions. They've been studying hegemony ship designs for the past 18 hours. We have complete tactical data on their entire fleet. Commander Lim smiled. The aliens thought they were safe in their formation above Earth. They had no idea that tiny, invisible ships had been flying around them for almost a day, recording everything. Captain Oh-jin-A was aboard one of those stealth frigates, the Shadow Walker. Her ship was only 50 meters long and completely invisible to normal sensors. She had been flying loops around the hegemony fleet, studying their ships up close. Weapons analysis complete, she reported to her crew. Their main guns are powerful, but they have a 12-second charging cycle. Their shields are strong in front but weak on the sides and back. Their armor is thick, but it's designed to stop energy weapons, not kinetic projectiles. What about their engines? Asked her tactical officer. That's the interesting part. Their ships are fast, but they're not built for maneuvering in combat. They're designed for straight-line travel between star systems. In a real fight, they'll be sitting ducks. This was exactly what the Dark Fleet needed to know. The hegemony ships looked impressive, but they had been built by an empire that hadn't fought a real war in centuries. They were designed to intimidate, not to fight. On Earth, Dr. Song Mi-kyung was in her laboratory, analyzing every piece of data the stealth ships were sending back. As humanity's leading expert on alien technology, she was responsible for finding ways to defeat weapons and defenses that were supposedly far more advanced than anything humans had built. Interesting, she said to her assistant. Their energy shields work by deflecting particle beams and plasma weapons, but they're not designed to stop solid objects moving at high velocity. You mean kinetic weapons? Exactly. Railguns, mass drivers, even old-fashioned missiles, their shields will barely slow them down. This was perfect news for the Dark Fleet. While the aliens had been building energy weapons and plasma cannons, humans had been perfecting kinetic weapons that could punch through any defense. Fleet Admiral Baek Ju-won was commanding the Outer System Defense Force from his flagship, Storm of Victory. His job was to make sure no hegemony reinforcements could reach Earth once the fighting started. Sir, our long-range sensors are detecting movement in nearby star systems, reported his sensor officer. It looks like the hegemony is moving additional fleets toward Earth. How many ships? At least 200 more vessels, maybe 300. They'll arrive in approximately 60 hours. Admiral Baek nodded. The hegemony was bringing reinforcements, just as the Dark Fleet Command had predicted. But they were making a crucial mistake. They were bringing their ships in small groups, expecting to face a helpless planet. Send word to Admiral Kang, he ordered. Tell him the enemy is splitting their forces. Perfect. Back on Earth, Ambassador Han was preparing for another performance. The hegemony had demanded a progress report on Earth's surrender preparations. He needed to buy more time while making it look like humanity was slowly giving up hope. High Commander, he said during the second transmission, we have made significant progress in convincing our people to accept your rule. However, we have encountered some difficulties. What kind of difficulties? The alien leader demanded. Some of our military leaders are resistant to the idea of surrender. They speak of fighting a hopeless battle rather than accepting your mercy. We are working to convince them, but it may take additional time. The High Commander made an annoyed gesture with two of his forearms. Your military leaders are fools if they think they can resist the hegemony. Our ships could destroy your entire planet in minutes. Yes, High Commander. We understand this completely. We are explaining to them that resistance is impossible. But they are stubborn. Perhaps if you could demonstrate your power? Not to harm anyone, of course, but simply to show them what we face. This was the crucial part of the deception. Han needed the hegemony to believe that Earth's military was reluctant to surrender, but not actually planning to fight. He needed them to think they were dealing with stubborn pride, not careful preparation. Very well, the High Commander said. We will demonstrate our power. Perhaps that will convince your foolish soldiers to see reason. The demonstration came an hour later. A single hegemony ship broke formation and fired its main weapon at an uninhabited asteroid between Earth and Mars. The asteroid simply disappeared, vaporized in an instant by a beam of pure energy. On Earth, people watched the demonstration on television and the internet. Many of them were genuinely terrified, but in the hidden command centers of the Dark Fleet, officers and technicians were taking careful notes. Energy output analysis complete, reported Dr. Song. That weapon drew power from their entire ship for approximately 30 seconds. During that time, their shields and engines were at minimum power. Reload time? Asked Captain O. At least 5 minutes to recharge for another shot like that. This was valuable intelligence. The hegemony's most powerful weapons left them vulnerable, while charging and recharging. A well-coordinated attack during those windows could cripple their entire fleet. As the 48-hour extension approached its end, the pieces of humanity's plan were falling into place. The aliens believed they were. Admiral Kang Min-Soo stood on the bridge of the Hidden Dragon, watching the countdown timer reach its final minutes. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, checking and rechecking every system. In 6 minutes, the biggest moment in human history would begin. All battle groups report ready, sir, said Captain Yu Hae-jin. Every ship is in position and standing by for your command. Quantum communication network is fully operational, added Communications Officer Lee Tae-jun. All 3,000 ships are connected and ready for simultaneous activation. Admiral Kang nodded. 50 years of preparation had led to this moment. 50 years of building ships in secret, training crews in hidden facilities, and waiting for the day when humanity would have to prove that freedom was worth fighting for. Open a channel to Ambassador Han, he ordered. On the surface of Earth, Ambassador Han was preparing for his final performance. The hegemony expected him to announce Earth's complete surrender. Instead, he was about to deliver a very different message. Admiral Kang, Han said through his secure communication device. I'm ready when you are. Thank you, Ambassador. It's been an honor working with you. Give them hell. Han smiled and walked to the podium one last time. The cameras activated, broadcasting his image to the hegemony fleet and across the galaxy. But this time, his voice wasn't shaking with fear. This time, he spoke with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. High Commander of the Galactic Hegemony, he began, the people of Earth have considered your ultimatum carefully. We have reached our decision. On the Hegemony flagship, the High Commander leaned forward in his command chair. Finally, these primitive humans were going to surrender. Then his fleet could move on to more important tasks. We reject your ultimatum completely, Han said firmly. Earth will not surrender. Earth will not kneel. Earth will not accept the rule of tyrants. The High Commander's 4 eyes went wide with shock. In 847 previous conquests, no species had ever said those words. Furthermore, Han continued, we demand that you leave our solar system immediately and never return. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is a direct order from the people of Earth. The alien commander began to laugh. You foolish little creature. You think your pathetic planet can give orders to the galactic hegemony? We will destroy every city on your world for this insult. You're welcome to try, Han said calmly. But I should warn you, you've made a serious mistake. You assumed that Earth was defenseless. You were wrong. That was the signal Admiral Kang had been waiting for. All ships, he said into his communication system. This is Admiral Kang Min-Soo, commanding the Dark Armada. The time has come. Execute Operation Revelation. All ships decloak simultaneously. Let them see what humanity really is. Across the solar system, 3,000 warships suddenly appeared. They materialized around Earth like ghosts becoming solid. Ships that had been hidden in asteroid fields, camouflaged against moons, and lurking in the darkness beyond the outer planets, all revealed themselves at exactly the same moment. On the Hegemony flagship, every alarm started sounding at once. Sensor operators screamed reports to their stunned commanders. Ships appearing all around us, hundreds of them. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database. They're surrounding our entire fleet. The High Commander stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Moments ago, his fleet had been facing a helpless planet. Now they were surrounded by the largest military formation he had ever seen. How many? He demanded. Still counting, sir. At least 2,000. No, 3,000 vessels. They're everywhere. Captain Yu He-jin smiled as she watched the Hegemony's formation begin to break apart in confusion. Sir, our stealth frigates report that several enemy ships are trying to flee. Orders? Let them run, Admiral Kang said. We want some of them to escape so they can tell the rest of the galaxy what happened here. The Dark Armada ships weren't just numerous. They were beautiful. Each one had been designed by humans who understood both engineering and art. They looked like weapons that had been shaped by evolution itself, sleek and deadly, and perfectly suited for their purpose. Captain Nam Seong-ho's Battle Group 12 had been disguised as asteroids near Saturn. Now his ships revealed their true forms as they raced toward Earth at speeds that made the Hegemony vessels look like they were standing still. All ships, maintain formation, he ordered. Let's show them how real warships move. His battle group swept through space in perfect coordination. Their movements synchronized like a school of fish or a flock of birds. The Hegemony ships tried to track them, but human vessels were too fast and too maneuverable. Commander Lim Da-un was coordinating the revelation from her command center on Ceres. On her screens, she could see the tactical situation developing, exactly as planned. All battle groups have successfully decloaked, she reported to Admiral Kang. The enemy fleet is completely surrounded. They're trying to form a defensive formation, but they're too confused to coordinate properly. What about their communications? We're jamming their standard channels but allowing their emergency frequencies to work. We want them to be able to call for help. Let the entire galaxy hear what's happening. That was part of the plan, too. Humanity didn't just want to defeat this one Hegemony fleet. They wanted to send a message to every species in the galaxy that the age of easy conquest was over. Captain O. Jin A's stealth frigate, Shadow Walker, was now visible, flying in formation with the main fleet. Her crew had spent the past day studying the enemy ships, and now they were ready to put that knowledge to use. "Target analysis complete," she reported. "Transmitting weak point data to all ships now. Across the Dark Armada, targeting computers were updated with precise information about where to hit the hegemony ships for maximum effect. The aliens had powerful vessels, but they also had vulnerabilities that human engineers knew how to exploit. Dr. Song Mi-kyung was monitoring the situation from her laboratory on Earth. The data streaming in from the fleet was beyond her wildest dreams. For the first time in human history, they were seeing advanced alien technology in action. "Fascinating," she said to her assistant. "Their shield technology is even more primitive than we thought. They're using a simple particle deflection system. Our kinetic weapons will go through their defenses like they're not even there." On the hegemony flagship, the High Commander was trying to understand how this had happened. How had a primitive species built such a massive fleet? How had they hidden it so completely? "Analysis of enemy vessels," he ordered his tactical officer. "Sir, their technology is unusual. The ships appear to be using some kind of exotic matter propulsion system. Their hulls are composed of materials not in our database. Their weapon signatures are completely unknown." "Are they more advanced than us?" I don't know, sir. They're different. Very different." That was the truth the hegemony was beginning to understand. Humanity hadn't tried to copy alien technology. They had developed their own path, their own solutions, their own way of building warships, and their way was very, very effective. Admiral Kang opened a communication channel to the hegemony fleet. "High Commander," he said, his voice calm and professional. "I am Admiral Kang Min-soo of the Human Dark Armada. You are completely surrounded and outgunned. I'm offering you one chance to withdraw from this system peacefully." "You dare threaten the galactic hegemony?" the alien leader snarled. "We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We are the masters of this galaxy." "Not anymore," Admiral Kang replied. "You've spent so long conquering helpless planets that you've forgotten how to fight. We haven't. We've been preparing for this war since the day we discovered you existed." "Impossible. Our intelligence reports show that your species only achieved spaceflight 50 years ago." Admiral Kang smiled. "Your intelligence reports show you what we wanted you to see. While you were watching our public space program, we were building this." He gestured toward the massive fleet surrounding the aliens. "You have 1 hour to leave our solar system," he continued. "If you're still here after that, we'll consider it an act of war. And trust me, High Commander, you don't want to go to war with humanity." The transmission ended, leaving the hegemony fleet alone with a terrible choice. They could retreat and admit that a primitive species had defeated them, or they could fight and discover just how deadly humanity could be when threatened. Either way, the galaxy was about to change forever. The age of the hegemony's easy conquests was over. The age of human resistance had begun, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, other species were listening to the emergency transmissions from the hegemony fleet, learning that for the first time in centuries, someone had said no to the galaxy's greatest empire and lived to tell about it. The High Commander of the hegemony fleet stared at the tactical display showing 3,000 human warships surrounding his forces. His species had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. They had never retreated from a primitive world. "They were not going to start now. All ships, prepare for combat," he ordered. These humans may have surprised us, but they are still inferior. We will destroy them and make an example of their world. Admiral Kang Min-soo watched the hegemony ships begin to power their weapon systems. He had hoped they would choose to leave peacefully, but he had also prepared for this moment. Humanity's first real space battle was about to begin. "All battle groups, this is Admiral Kang," he said over the quantum communication network. "The enemy has chosen to fight. Execute Combat Protocol 7. Show them what human warfare looks like." Captain Ko Hyun-woo commanded the fast attack group that had been waiting for this order. His ships were small and quick, designed to swarm around larger enemies like wolves attacking a bear. "All fighters, launch immediately," he ordered. "Remember your training. These alien ships are powerful, but they're slow and clumsy. Use that against them." Hundreds of small human fighters poured out of their carrier ships, but these weren't the simple space fighters that appeared in movies. These were highly advanced combat vessels, each one controlled by a pilot who had trained their entire life for this moment. The hegemony had never seen anything like them. Their own ships were huge and impressive, designed to intimidate enemies into surrender. They had no experience fighting against swarms of small, fast attackers. "What are those things?" demanded the hegemony tactical officer. "Unknown vessel type," his sensor operator replied. "They're too small to be warships, but they're carrying weapons that read as military grade." The human fighters spread out around the alien fleet like a cloud of angry insects. They moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully coordinated. When the hegemony ships tried to target them, the fighters were already somewhere. Elstat Commander An So-ra was leading Fighter Squadron 7 in her ship Lightning Strike. She had been flying combat simulations since she was 10 years old, and now all that training was about to pay off. "Squadron 7, target the big ship in the center," she ordered. "Hit their shield generators with kinetic rounds. Remember, their shields are designed to stop energy weapons, not solid projectiles." Her fighters dove toward the hegemony flagship like hawks attacking prey. The alien ship's defensive systems tried to track them, but the human pilots were too fast and too unpredictable. They fired their weapons and peeled away before the massive ship could respond. The kinetic rounds, simple chunks of metal accelerated to tremendous speeds, punched through the alien shields as if they weren't there. The hegemony crew watched, in shock as their supposedly impenetrable defenses failed completely. "Shield generators are damaged," reported the alien tactical officer. "How are their primitive weapons penetrating our defenses?" The High Commander had no answer. In 1,000 years of conquest, no enemy had ever found a way to defeat hegemony shield technology. But these humans had done it on their first try. Chief Engineer Pyo Jung-min was monitoring the battle from her position on the human flagship. As weapons hit the alien ships, her sensors analyzed every aspect of their technology. Within minutes, she was sending updates to the entire human fleet. "All ships, this is Engineering Command," she announced. "Enemy hull armor is strong against plasma weapons, but weak against high-velocity impacts. Recommend switching to kinetic ammunition for maximum effectiveness." Across the Dark Armada, weapon systems were quickly reconfigured. The humans had built their ships to be adaptable, able to change tactics instantly based on new information. It was a huge advantage over enemies who relied on standard procedures. The hegemony tried to fight back using their traditional tactics. Their huge ships formed up in battle lines and began firing their massive energy weapons at the human fleet. It was an impressive display of firepower, but it wasn't effective. Captain Nam Song-ho's Battle Group 12 demonstrated why. As the alien weapons charged up, a process that took almost 15 seconds, his ships simply moved out of the way. By the time the energy beams fired, the human vessels were already somewhere else. "This is pathetic," said Lieutenant Kim Jae-ho, Nam's tactical officer. "They fight like they're standing still shooting at targets. Don't they know how to maneuver in combat?" The answer was no, they didn't. The hegemony had spent so long fighting, helpless enemies that they had forgotten the basics of real warfare. Their ships were designed to look intimidating and deliver devastating attacks against stationary targets. They weren't built for the kind of fast, fluid combat that humans excelled at. Commander Lim Da-un was coordinating the overall battle from her command center. She watched as human ships danced around the alien fleet, hitting them from unexpected angles and disappearing before they could respond. "Battle Group 5, hit their engines," she ordered. "Battle Group 9, target their communication arrays. Battle Group 15, go after their weapon systems." This was another advantage humans had. They understood the importance of coordinating multiple attacks simultaneously. While the hegemony ships fought as individual vessels, the human fleet fought as a single organism. Captain Ojin A's intelligence had been perfect. The alien ships did have weak spots, and human weapons were hitting them with surgical precision. Hegemony vessels that had seemed invincible minutes earlier were now losing power, weapons, and maneuverability. But the aliens weren't giving up. The High Commander ordered his remaining ships to focus their fire on the largest human vessels, hoping to destroy the enemy's command structure. "Target their flagship," he ordered. "If we can kill their leaders, the rest will surrender." It was exactly the wrong tactic to use against humans. When hegemony fire concentrated on Admiral Kang's ship Hidden Dragon, the rest of the human fleet immediately responded. Hundreds of ships moved to protect their flagship, creating overlapping fields of defensive fire. "Sir, damage report," said Captain Yu Hai-jin as the ship shook under alien weapons fire. "Minor hull damage, shields holding," reported the damage control officer. "Engineering teams are already making repairs." "Good," Admiral Kang said calmly. "All ships continue the attack. Don't worry about us. We can take care of ourselves." That was another difference between human and alien military culture. The hegemony expected their leaders to stay safe while their soldiers fought and died. Human leaders fought alongside their troops, sharing the danger and earning their loyalty through courage rather than rank. As the battle continued, it became clear that the humans had advantages the aliens had never encountered before. Human pilots could think and react faster than alien crews. Human ships could change tactics instantly, while alien vessels followed rigid procedures. Human weapons were designed to exploit specific weaknesses, while alien weapons relied on brute force. Dr. Song Mi-kyung was analyzing the battle data in real time, discovering things about alien technology that would have taken years to learn in peacetime. "Fascinating," she said to her research team. "Their power systems are incredibly inefficient. Every time they fire their main weapons, they have to shut down other systems to compensate. They're powerful, but they're not well designed." "What does that mean for the battle?" asked her assistant. "It means we can predict their actions. Every time they charge their big guns, they become vulnerable to attack. We can time our strikes perfectly, and that's exactly what the human fleet began doing. As soon as alien ships started charging their main weapons, human fighters would swarm in to attack their now defenseless systems. It was like fighting enemies who announced their attacks in advance. The turning point came when Commander An's fighters managed to destroy the shield generators on 3 hegemony ships simultaneously. Without their defenses, the massive alien vessels became easy targets for human capital ships. Captain Ko's fast attack group moved in for the kill, their weapons tearing through alien hull armor like it was paper. Within minutes, 3 of the most powerful ships in the hegemony fleet were drifting helplessly in space, their crews evacuating in escape pods. "This is impossible," the High Commander said, watching his fleet fall apart around him. "How are these primitives defeating us?" His tactical officer had been studying the human attack patterns. "Sir, I think I understand. They're not fighting like any species we've encountered before. They're not trying to prove their strength or show their power. They're just trying to win." That was the key difference. The hegemony fought to demonstrate their superiority. Humans fought to survive. And when survival is at stake, humans become very creative and very dangerous. As more alien ships were disabled or destroyed, the rest of the hegemony fleet began to lose cohesion. Some ships tried to retreat, while others attempted to continue fighting. The result was chaos in their ranks. Admiral Kong saw his opportunity. "All ships, final push," he ordered. "Drive them out of our system. Make sure they understand that Earth is not available for conquest." The Dark Armada pressed their attack with renewed intensity. Human ships that had been holding back reserves now committed everything to. The emergency transmission reached the Hegemony High Council on their capital world of Dominion Prime, just as the surviving ships from Earth were limping home. Council leader Vexatharan listened to the High Commander's report with growing disbelief. "You're telling me that a primitive species not only refused our ultimatum, but actually defeated our fleet?" Vexatharan's voice carried the cold anger of someone who had never heard the word no before. "Yes, Council Leader," the High Commander replied, his image flickering on the communication screen. "They had over 3,000 warships. Advanced technology, tactics we've never seen before. We lost 37 ships and had to retreat." "Impossible. Our intelligence reports clearly showed that this humanity only achieved spaceflight 50 years ago. Their public spaceflight program, yes, but they've been building a secret military fleet for decades. Council Leader, we walked into a trap." Admiral A. Seo Wanho was listening to the same transmission from his position aboard the human deep space monitoring station beyond Pluto. For the past 24 hours, his teams had been intercepting and analyzing communications across the local region of the galaxy. "Sir, we're picking up chatter from over 40 different species," reported Communications Officer Park Jung-woo. "Word about what happened here is spreading fast." "What kind of reactions are we seeing?" "Mixed, sir. Some species are shocked that anyone would dare fight the hegemony. Others are interested. We're detecting increased communication traffic in systems that have been quiet for decades." Admiral Seo nodded. This was exactly what humanity had hoped for. For too long, the galaxy had lived under the hegemony's rule because everyone believed resistance was impossible. Now that belief was shattered. Director Lee Yoon-ji was in her office at Dark Fleet Intelligence, coordinating the most important information-gathering operation in human history. Her teams had been monitoring galactic communications for decades, but now they were seeing patterns they had never observed before. "Report," she said to her senior analyst. "Ma'am, we're seeing spontaneous uprisings in at least 12 systems," said Captain Kwon Min-jung. "Species that surrendered to the hegemony years ago are suddenly attacking hegemony outposts and supply convoys." "Are they coordinating with each other?" "Not yet, but some of them are trying to establish contact with us. We're receiving encrypted messages on frequencies we've never used publicly." Director Lee smiled. Humanity's victory hadn't just defeated one hegemony fleet. It had given hope to oppressed species across the galaxy. One of those species was the Kethmari, a race of skilled engineers who had been forced to build weapons for the hegemony for over 200 years. Their leader, Chief Builder Zethka, was meeting with his council in secret. "The humans have shown us something we thought was impossible," he said. "The hegemony can be defeated. Their ships can be destroyed. Their empire can be challenged." "But what can we do?" asked his second-in-command. "We have no warships, no weapons of our own." "We have something more valuable," Zethka replied. "We know how hegemony technology works. We built most of it, and we can make sure it stops working when they need it most." Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds. Species that had given up hope were suddenly remembering what freedom felt like. But the hegemony wasn't going to accept these rebellions quietly. On Dominion Prime, the High Council was planning their response. "Double the fleet assigned to the human system," ordered Council Leader Vexatherin. "Send the Devastator-class dreadnoughts. Show the galaxy what happens to species that resist us." "Yes, Council Leader," replied Fleet Marshal Cordon. "How many ships should we deploy?" "All of them. Every ship in the 7th, 9th, and 11th battle fleets. I want that system turned into an example that the rest of the galaxy will never forget." Captain Quan Minjung intercepted this transmission 12 hours later. The message she sent to Earth was simple but terrifying. "Massive hegemony reinforcement fleet departing Dominion Prime. Estimated strength, over 500 ships, including their most powerful vessels. Arrival time, 72 hours. Admiral Kang Min-soo received the message while his fleet was still cleaning up debris from the first battle. 500 ships, including vessels humanity had never seen before. It would be the largest space battle in galactic history. Opinion, Captain Yu?" he asked his second-in-command. "Sir, we hurt them badly in the first fight, but 500 fresh ships is a different challenge entirely. We'll need help." "What kind of help?" "The kind that comes from species who want their freedom back." Dr. Ryu Tae-ho was working frantically. In his research laboratory, studying the wreckage and technology salvaged from the destroyed hegemony ships. Every piece of alien equipment was being analyzed, reverse-engineered, and understood. "How are we doing on the technological analysis?" Admiral Kang asked during his daily briefing. "Better than expected, sir," Dr. Ryu replied. "Their technology is powerful but not efficient. We've identified several critical vulnerabilities in their ship designs. More importantly, we figured out how their faster-than-light communication system works." "Can we intercept their messages?" "Better than that. We can send our own messages using their communication network. Every species in the galaxy will be able to hear us." That gave Admiral Kang an idea. If humanity was going to face the entire hegemony fleet, they needed allies, and the best way to find allies was to speak directly to every oppressed species in the galaxy. Commander Moon Hyun-soo was coordinating the secret negotiations with potential allies. His teams had made contact with over 30 different species, all of whom had been conquered by the hegemony at different times. "Status report on alliance negotiations," Admiral Kang requested. "Sir, we have confirmed support from the Kethmari, the Veltar, and the humans of New Geneva. The Kethmari are sabotaging hegemony equipment across 17 systems. The Veltar are providing intelligence on hegemony fleet movements, and New Geneva, well, they're sending ships." New Geneva. I thought that was a lost colony. Not lost, sir. Hidden. When the hegemony started expanding into human space 50 years ago, one of our colony ships went dark and disappeared. We assumed they were destroyed. Actually, they've been building their own fleet in secret, just like we did. This was incredible news. Humanity wasn't alone after all. There were human colonies out there that had been preparing for war just as Earth had. But the most important development was happening on a world called Sanctuary, where representatives from dozens of oppressed species were meeting in secret. Ambassador Velkana of the Kethmari stood before the assembled delegates. Friends, we have seen what courage can accomplish. The humans have shown us that the hegemony is not invincible, but they cannot win this war alone. None of us can. We must work together. What are you proposing? Asked Representative Zorthak of the Veltar. A formal alliance, a coalition of free species dedicated to ending hegemony rule forever. We call it the Galactic Liberation Front. The vote was unanimous. Back on Earth, Admiral Kang was receiving reports of the galaxy-wide rebellion that humanity's victory had inspired. But he was also getting disturbing intelligence about what the hegemony was planning in response. Sir, our deep space monitors are detecting movement from multiple hegemony strongholds, reported Captain Ojin A. It's not just the fleet from Dominion Prime. They're mobilizing forces from across their entire empire. How many ships total? Preliminary estimates suggest over 2,000 vessels, sir. They're planning to crush not just us, but every species that's joined the rebellion. Admiral Kang stared at the tactical display showing the massive enemy forces converging on human space. 2,000 ships against humanity's 3,000. But the human ships would be defending their home system, while the aliens would be fighting far from their supply lines. Sir, said Captain Yu, there's something else. We're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Liberation Front. They're asking if we want to coordinate our defense efforts. Put them through. The communication, screen activated, showing Ambassador Velkana and representatives from a dozen different species. Admiral Kang, Velkana said, we want to thank you for giving the galaxy hope again. Your species has reminded us all what courage looks like. Thank you, Ambassador. But we're going to need more than courage to win this war. That's why we're calling. The Liberation Front has over 800 ships ready to fight alongside you. We also have intelligence assets, sabotage teams, and technological specialists. The question is, are you willing to lead a galaxy-wide rebellion against the hegemony? Admiral Kang looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were people who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. Now they were being asked to fight not just for Earth, but for freedom across the entire galaxy. Ambassador, he said, humanity would be honored to stand with you. Let's show the hegemony what happens when free people decide to fight back. The die was cast. What had started as Earth's defense against a single alien fleet was now a galaxy-wide war for freedom. The hegemony was bringing its full might to bear, but for the first time in centuries, they would face an enemy that refused to surrender. The real war was about to begin. Captain Wu Da-young stood on the bridge of her ship Relentless Hunter as it emerged from hyperspace in the Kepler 442 system. Around her, 50 other human warships materialized from the void, their dark hulls barely visible against the stars. This was humanity's first offensive operation beyond the solar system. Target acquired, reported her tactical officer. Hegemony supply convoy, 12 cargo ships with 6 escort vessels. Any civilians? Negative, Captain. All ships are automated cargo haulers carrying weapons and equipment to hegemony forces. Captain Wu nodded. The Dark Fleet had strict rules about protecting innocent life, even during wartime. But military targets were fair game. All ships, begin attack run. Remember, we're not just destroying supplies, we're sending a message. The human ships swept down on the hegemony convoy like sharks attacking a school of fish. The alien escort vessels tried to fight back, but they were designed for intimidating merchant ships, not battling military forces. Within 20 minutes, the entire convoy was destroyed. But Captain Wu's mission wasn't finished yet. Communications. Broadcast on all hegemony frequencies, she ordered. Channel open, Captain. Attention, hegemony forces, she said, her voice carrying across space to listening posts throughout the sector. This is Captain Wu De Young of the Human Liberation Fleet. Your supply lines are no longer safe. Your convoys are no longer protected. Every day you continue this war, we will cost you more ships, more resources, more time. The age of easy conquest is over. Admiral Hong Sung-hyun was coordinating similar attacks across a dozen star systems from his command ship, Freedom's Dawn. The strategy was simple. Hit the hegemony's supply lines, communication networks, and isolated outposts while their main fleet was focused on Earth. Status report from all strike groups, he requested. Strike Group Alpha destroyed a weapons depot in the Vega system, reported his operations officer. Strike Group Beta disabled a communication relay in Wolf 3529. Strike Group Gamma reports successful attack on mining facilities in the Procyon system. Casualties? Minimal on our side, sir. The hegemony wasn't prepared for coordinated attacks on their rear areas. This was exactly what Admiral Hong had hoped for. The hegemony had grown complacent after centuries of fighting enemies who only defended their home worlds. They had never faced an opponent who took the war to them, but the war was spreading beyond just human forces. On the industrial world of Keth Prime, Chief Builder Zethka was implementing the largest sabotage operation in galactic history. Report from Factory Complex 7, said his aide. The weapon manufacturing systems have been modified, Zethka replied with a smile. The next batch of plasma cannons they produce will explode when fired instead of shooting at targets. And the shipyard facilities? The hull plating being installed on new hegemony ships has been weakened. The ships will look normal, but they'll fall apart under combat stress. Across dozens of worlds, similar sabotage operations were taking place. The Kethmari had built most of the hegemony's equipment over the past 2 centuries. They knew exactly how to make it stop working at the worst possible moment. Meanwhile, the Veltar were providing intelligence that was proving invaluable to the rebellion. Their natural ability to blend into crowds and mimic other species had made them perfect spies. Agent Corden was on the hegemony stronghold of Fortress Prime, observing the fleet preparations that would soon threaten Earth. The Devastator-class ships are nearly ready, he reported through encrypted channels. But there's a problem with their supply situation. The sabotage operations have disrupted their logistics more than they're admitting publicly. This intelligence reached Admiral Kang just as he was preparing Earth's defenses for the coming siege. How serious is their supply problem? He asked Director Lee Yoon-ji. Serious enough that they're having to strip defensive fleets from other systems to support the attack on Earth, she replied, which gives our strike groups even more targets. But the hegemony wasn't sitting idle while rebellions spread across their empire. They were taking increasingly desperate measures to maintain control. On the peaceful trading world of Haven, hegemony forces were implementing pacification protocols that were really just massacre with a fancy name. All residents will report to designated areas for loyalty screening, announced the hegemony occupation commander. Any resistance will be met with immediate termination. The message was clear. Surrender completely or die. But the people of Haven had been listening to the broadcasts from Earth and the Galactic Liberation Front. They had heard that resistance was possible. Captain Im Soo-jin received the emergency, Transmission from Haven, while her ship Defiant Spirit was patrolling the outer edges of human space. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the Haven system," reported her communications officer. "The hegemony is conducting mass executions of civilians." Captain Im felt her jaw clench. The Dark Fleet's mission was to defend Earth, but she couldn't ignore innocent people being murdered. "Set course for Haven, maximum speed," she ordered. "Signal Admiral Kang that we're responding to a humanitarian crisis." "Captain, we're only one ship. The hegemony has at least 20 vessels in that system. Then we'll have to be very creative." The Defiant Spirit arrived at Haven to find hegemony. Ships in orbit around the planet, their weapons pointed at major cities. On the surface, execution squads were systematically killing anyone suspected of supporting the rebellion. Captain Im couldn't fight 20 ships directly, but she had other options. "Communications. Hack into the planetary broadcast network," she ordered. "I want every person on Haven to hear this message." Minutes later, her voice was broadcasting across the entire planet. "People of Haven, this is Captain Im Soo-jin of the Human Liberation Fleet. We know what's happening to you. We know you're suffering. But you are not alone. Help is coming. The galaxy is fighting back. Do not lose hope." The message was simple, but its effect was immediate. Across Haven, people who had been cowering in their homes suddenly remembered that they outnumbered their oppressors by millions to one. The uprising began in the capital city and spread across the planet within hours. Hegemony occupation forces found themselves facing not just a few rebels, but an entire world in revolt. Admiral Park Min-woo was leading the human relief force that arrived at Haven just as the planetary uprising reached its peak. His battle group struck the hegemony orbital fleet while the surface population overwhelmed the occupation forces. "This is how we win," he said to his staff as they watched hegemony ships fleeing the system. "Not just by defeating their fleets, but by inspiring their victims to fight back." But the hegemony's response to these rebellions was becoming increasingly brutal. On worlds where they maintained control, mass executions were becoming common. Entire cities were being destroyed as examples to others. Dr. Cho Hye-won was monitoring these atrocities from her research station on Luna. As humanity's leading expert on hegemony psychology, she was trying to understand their increasing desperation. "They're not just angry," she reported to Admiral Kong. "They're afraid. For the first time in their history, they're facing the possibility of actually losing a war. That's making them dangerous in ways we haven't seen before." "How dangerous?" "Sir, I'm detecting preparations for deployment of planet-killer weapons. If they can't control rebellious worlds, they're planning to destroy them completely. This changed everything. The war was no longer just about military victory. It was about saving entire civilizations from annihilation." Admiral Kang called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Liberation Front leadership. "Friends," he said to the assembled representatives, "we're receiving reports that the hegemony is preparing to use planet-killer weapons against rebellious worlds. We need to accelerate our timeline." "What are you proposing?" asked Ambassador Velkana. "A direct strike at the heart of their empire. We take the war to Dominion Prime itself." "That's suicide," protested Representative Zorthak. "Their capital system is the most heavily defended location in the galaxy." "Maybe," Admiral Kang admitted, "but if we don't act soon, they'll start destroying entire worlds out of spite. We can't let that happen." Captain No Yuri, who had been quiet during the meeting, finally spoke up. "Sir, there might be another option." Our intelligence suggests that many hegemony subject species are only loyal because they're afraid. If we can demonstrate that we're strong enough to threaten their capital, those species might switch sides. Psychological victory instead of a military one? Both, sir. We hit their capital hard enough to prove we can reach them anywhere. But we also broadcast the attack across the galaxy. Show every oppressed species that the hegemony isn't invincible. Admiral Kang considered this. It was incredibly risky, but it might be the only way to prevent the genocide that was coming. Very well, he said. We'll plan the strike on Dominion. Prime. But first, we need to deal with the fleet that's coming to destroy Earth. If we can't defend our home, we can't help anyone else. As the meeting ended, every species in the Liberation Front began preparing for the largest military operation in galactic history. They would defend Earth, strike at the hegemony's heart, and hopefully inspire the Fleet Admiral Yang Dong-hyuk watched through the viewports of his flagship New Dawn as the largest military force in galactic history prepared for the final assault. Around Earth, ships from dozens of species formed a massive armada that stretched from Luna to Mars. Human vessels flew alongside Keth Mari engineering ships, Veltar stealth frigates, and warships from 30 other liberated worlds. Final fleet count, Admiral, reported Captain Lee Min-ho. 4,736 combat vessels from the Galactic Liberation Front, plus our own Dark Armada. Total strength, nearly 8,000 ships. And the hegemony force? Long-range sensors show approximately 6,000 vessels approaching Dominion Prime's outer defenses. This will be the largest space battle in recorded history. Admiral Yang nodded grimly. 3 years had passed since humanity first revealed the Dark Armada. 3 years of war, rebellion, and liberation. Now it would all come down to this final confrontation at the heart of the hegemony empire. The plan was ambitious beyond anything ever attempted. While the main liberation fleet engaged the hegemony's home defense forces, strike groups would hit strategic targets across their capital system. The goal wasn't just military victory. It was the complete dismantling of an empire that had oppressed the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Captain No Yuri was aboard her diplomatic vessel. Peaceful tomorrow, preparing for perhaps the most important negotiation in galactic history. Her mission would begin only after the military phase succeeded. If it succeeded. Captain, said her aide, we're receiving updates from our intelligence assets inside hegemony territory. The sabotage campaigns have been more effective than we hoped. How effective? 3 of their Devastator-class dreadnoughts suffered critical system failures during their launch sequence. The Keth Mari modifications to their equipment are working perfectly. This was crucial intelligence. Every disabled enemy ship was one less obstacle to their victory. Admiral Kang Min-soo, now serving as overall commander of Liberation Forces, was coordinating the final approach to Dominion Prime from his flagship Hidden Dragon. The journey had taken 2 weeks, during which enemy scouts had constantly harassed their fleet. But now they were here, at the gates of the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. All ships, this is Admiral Kang, he announced over the fleet communication network. Today we fight not just for our own freedom, but for every species that has suffered under hegemony rule. Today we end 1,000 years of tyranny. The hegemony's response was immediate and overwhelming. Their home defense fleet was the most powerful military force they had ever assembled. Ancient dreadnoughts that had conquered hundreds of worlds, advanced battleships equipped with planet-killing weapons, and swarms of smaller vessels that outnumbered the attacking fleet. But the Liberation Fleet had advantages the hegemony had, never faced before. Commander An So-ra, now leading the combined fighter squadrons of 12 different species, demonstrated the first advantage. Her pilots didn't just know how to fly, they knew how to work together despite coming from completely different worlds and cultures. "All squadrons, execute pattern Delta 7, she ordered. Thousands of fighters from dozens of species moved. In perfect coordination, their attack patterns adapted from the tactical doctrines of multiple civilizations. The hegemony's defensive systems couldn't predict or counter tactics that combined human innovation, Kethmari engineering precision, and Veltar stealth techniques. "Their fighter screens are collapsing," reported Lieutenant Park So-young from her reconnaissance ship. "Enemy capital ships are exposed." Captain Ko Hyun-woo seized the opportunity immediately. His fast attack groups, now including ships from 6 different species, swept through the gaps in the hegemony formation like water flowing through cracks in a dam. "All units, target their command vessels," he ordered. "Cut off their ability to coordinate." The battle was fierce, but the outcome was becoming clear. The Liberation Fleet fought with the desperation of people defending their freedom, while the hegemony fought with the confusion of an empire that had forgotten how to face real opposition. Chief Engineer Pyo Jung-min, now coordinating technical support for the entire Liberation Fleet, watched her screens with satisfaction as hegemony. Ships began experiencing the cascading system failures that Kethmari saboteurs had built into their equipment years earlier. "Admiral Kang, this is Engineering Command," she reported. "Enemy vessels are suffering critical malfunctions across their entire fleet. Their own equipment is turning against them." "Excellent. All ships, press the attack. Don't give them time to recover." The tide of battle turned decisively when the hegemony's flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion, suffered a catastrophic power failure just as it was preparing to fire its planet-killer weapon at the Liberation Fleet. Admiral Kim Jae-ho, commanding the Liberation Fleet's heavy assault group, didn't waste the opportunity. "All dreadnoughts, target the enemy flagship," he ordered. "Concentrated fire. End this." The combined firepower of a dozen species struck the hegemony flagship simultaneously. The ship that had been the symbol of their empire's invincibility broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up the entire star system. On the bridge of his own ship, Council Leader Vextharan watched his fleet disintegrate around him. For the first time in his long life, he was facing the possibility of total defeat. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the enemy fleet," reported his communications officer. "Put it through." Admiral Kang's image appeared on the screen, his expression calm but determined. "Council Leader Vextharan, this is Admiral Kang Min-soo of the Galactic Liberation Fleet. Your forces are defeated. Your empire is finished. I'm offering you one chance to surrender and prevent further bloodshed." "You think you can simply take over our empire?" Vextharan snarled. "Even if you defeat our fleet, you cannot rule the galaxy." "We don't want to rule the galaxy," Admiral Kang replied. "We want to free it." That was when Captain No Yuri stepped forward into the transmission. Behind her stood representatives from dozens of liberated species. "Council Leader," she said, "we're not here to replace your empire with another empire. We're here to offer something the galaxy has never seen before. A democracy, where every species has a voice, where no one rules over anyone else, where freedom is protected by law instead of by force." Impossible. The galaxy is too large, too diverse. There must be a central authority. "There will be," Captain No replied, "but it will be an authority chosen by the people it serves, not imposed by conquest. We call it the Galactic Republic." Around the star system, the last hegemony. Ships were either surrendering or fleeing into deep space. The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. Dr. Jung Min-suk was already broadcasting the new Galactic Constitution to every inhabited world in known space. The document had been written over 3 years of war by representatives from every species in the Liberation Front. Article 1, she read over galactic communication networks. All intelligent species have the inherent right to freedom and self-determination. No species may claim dominion over another. Article 2. The Galactic Republic shall be governed by elected representatives from each member world with decisions made by democratic vote rather than authoritarian decree. Article 3. The use of force against civilian populations is prohibited under all circumstances. Military action may only be taken in defense of freedom and democracy. On thousands of worlds across the galaxy, people who had lived under hegemony oppression for generations listened to these words with growing hope and excitement. The transition wasn't immediate or easy. It took months to establish the new government, structure and years to fully dismantle the hegemony's authoritarian systems. But slowly, the galaxy began to change. Admiral Park Min-woo found himself serving as the first director of galactic security, responsible for protecting the new republic from the remnants of the old empire and any other threats that might emerge. Status report on former hegemony territories, he requested during his daily briefing. 93% of former hegemony worlds have voted to join the republic, reported Captain Yu Hae-jin. The remaining 7% have chosen to remain independent, which is their right under the new constitution. Any remaining resistance from hegemony loyalists? Some isolated incidents, but nothing organized. Most former hegemony officials have either fled to unknown space or accepted amnesty in exchange for helping with the transition. The new republic's capital was established on Earth, not because humanity had conquered the galaxy, but because Earth was where the rebellion had begun. The planet that had refused to kneel became the symbol of freedom for countless species. 5 years after the final battle at Dominion Prime, Admiral Kang stood in the same observation deck on Luna Station, where Admiral Park Dae-ho had first watched alien ships appear in Earth's sky. But now the view was very different. Human ships flew alongside vessels from dozens of different species, all of them bearing the symbols of the Galactic Republic. Children from multiple worlds played together in the station's parks, growing up, in a galaxy where diversity was celebrated rather than crushed. "Sir," said Captain Yu, joining him at the viewport, "the Republic Senate